Everyone, welcome to today's Time to Act Substance Use Echo. I'm Leo, and I'll be given a little bit of housekeeping items before Tim's presentation today. So just to let you guys know, we are recording this echo session just for educational and quality improvement purposes. So if you wouldn't like to be recorded, you can disconnect from the session now. But I think it's really fun being recorded and being on camera. And this is a participatory community. We're really interactive here. We like to interact during the case presentations. And for today, we can ask questions during the presentation as well. So if you'd like to drop them in the chat or raise your hand, we'd love to answer them. And let's also remember to please protect each other's individual privacy. So if we're sharing examples, let's just make sure to de-identify those examples and situations. If you're not sure about how to de-identify a certain example, you can always reach out to a hub member, and those hub members will have asterisks in front of their name, and that's how you can identify us and ask us for help. There are three key components of an echo session. The first is a didactic speaker, which today will be Tim Keady, and he's presenting on resiliency. The second is a case presentation, and we'll have that after the didactic speaker. And the third component of an echo session is just that professional networking. That's as we drop our name and contact information in the chat, just so we can share ideas with each other and just get to know each other a little bit better over this session. And if you don't know already how to rename your profile, here's a tiny little tutorial. If you'd like, you can just click those three buttons by your name and then click rename. And if we ask you to name yourself your name, your state, your organization, and perhaps your profession as well. And this is also how to raise your hand if you don't know how as well. It's just in the React functions. So if you'd like to ask a question during the presentation, you can raise your hand and we can get your question answered. And how to get credit for attendance. We provide certificates of attendance for attending an echo session, especially if you fill out that survey. Janelle is going to be dropping that survey link throughout the chat in today's session. So once you fill that out, we will be sending you a certificate of attendance for this session and for the specific session. Canvas, if you'd like an invite to our Canvas page, you can email projectscope@usu.edu. That's where we post all of our additional resources from the session, where we post our training recordings, and where we also post the case recommendations from our case presentations. And if you'd like, you can share a case study with us. You can also email projectscope@usu.edu. If you're not comfortable presenting your own case study, we can always work something out and one of the team members can actually present it for you. So if you do have a case that you're having a little bit of a hard time on, you can always email us and we can get you those case recommendations in our upcoming sessions. And just to make sure, hopefully you guys are following all of us on social media. We have a Facebook, Instagram, and a LinkedIn. If you scan those QR codes, it'll take you right to those pages. So if you want to, you can follow. We post a lot of updates and reminders about sessions and when sessions are happening and lots of facts from sessions as well. And also, if you'd like to, you can join our Facebook group where we continue some discussions after sessions and where there are some polls being posted and just some questions being asked just to get to know you guys a little bit better. And yeah, so now I'll let Tim share his screen.
Okay, what a great introduction he gave. That was pretty amazing. Let's see what we got here. This changed. Wait a minute. One moment. Just minor technical difficulties. So it happens sometimes. There we go. Hopefully everybody's seeing that now. Very good. Well, thank you. I appreciate Leo and the Echo Department allowing me to come and speak with you guys today and talk about resilience. I was kind of looking at people as they were checking in, seeing what they were talking about on there, some of the information that they had. So we appreciate knowing a little bit more about the people that we're going to be working with and talking to today. So as you see, I'm Tim Keady, part of a initiative that started about 6 years ago at USU Extension to bring some health and wellness into what we were doing. The idea was to reduce deaths from substance misuse and suicide. That's what I was asked to do. I worked at a student health center for many years, helped be an administrator and helped with a volunteer ambulance corps. So I've got some different experience, bringing hopefully resilience to people from all different areas. I work with children, adolescents, adults, veterans, anybody that needs some assistance, we help with extension of what my role is um, as a faculty member there. This is what I talk about being resilient and seeing negativity. It's one of those things you see once in a while. It's one that I've always liked because I like that yellow sunglass kind of thing. But today we're going to talk about some quick definitions, practical strategies, how to support communities and strengthen families going through challenges, and use some skills and what we can do to help reduce the stress for people that we're working with or doing. And I recognize that some people are going to be providers, some people are going to be with others that may have disabilities, maybe family members, maybe you're working with them. And so we know that that is a really difficult situation for many people to be in. And we all try and do things to the best of our ability, but it is difficult at times to always, take care of yourself in that area. So we'll talk about hopefully some strategies that will help, and we'll go from there. Just some quick definitions. We talk about the APA, what resilience is, process, and outcome of successfully adapting to difficult or challenging life experiences through some of these other opportunities. We don't call them disabilities or anything, but more opportunity kind of thing. Adapting to difficult or challenging life experiences through mental, emotional, and behavioral flexibility and adjustment to external and internal demands. Um, Emotional resilience, as sure as many of you know, sometimes it's not always defined really easily, but it's what gives people the psychological strength to cope with stress and adapt and recover from adversity. Um, some things that I think is important. Resilience is about being able to overcome the unexpected. Talk about sustainability. A lot of people mention that to us and being resilient, but that's really about survival. Goals of resilience for me and for what I do is to have people thrive. That's what I find is important. We talk about you kind of separate resilience into adaptive and maladaptive forms. So when being resilient starts to harm your well-being or harm other people, then it's maladaptive. So it's pretty self-explanatory, but it's something to put in so you have that definition. What we get asked a lot, and I'm sure you may hear this too, especially if you work with anybody with a disability, is can resilience be learned? And the APA believes that it can. Resilience is ordinary, not extraordinary. So we talk about the research suggests resilience is something that can be learned, developed, and enhanced with positive behaviors, thoughts, and actions. So being resilient can involve experiencing adverse events, trauma, or significant stressors. It takes time and effort. And so that's something we know people that go through that may have a resilient factor happen after those things occur. Let's talk a little bit more about that as we go forward, but just remember that resilience can be learned. So some of the things just some quick things to build resilience. And some of you may have your own ideas, and there's lots of things out there, lots of different models on building resilience. There's a number of things that we pulled together from some of my experiences. And I've spoken before to this group about some of the people that I work with. I work with people in treatment. I work with people that may want to harm themselves. I work with people that are youth and that maybe have some behavioral issues, some family structure issues, and we try and help them just with some simple education programs and finding ways to have them interact better with others and communicate. But building resilience, the positive factors, we know these are pretty normal things. I'm sure what you deal with, secure attachment and bonding is very important. Having positive role models, the intellectual abilities, social skills, good physical health, adaptable temperamental traits, socially friendly, appearance and self-awareness is where they feel safe and comfortable. Their love, rules, and consequences, created with input from all, positive communication, purposeful and organized behaviors, active coping, cognitive flexibility, having some form of recreation that they find enjoyable, compartmentalization, sorry, compartmentalization, um, making sure they're able to separate things out from what's good and bad, being purposeful and organized, productivity, optimism and sense of humor, caring loved ones, and having the time to have that be done correctly. So resilience, those are some of the quick positive factors. Now we'll talk a little bit about some of those non-positive factors. Let's see here. My computer is slowing down a little bit here. Sorry about that. Let's see. Okay, some negative
There's
factors. There we go.
sorry to interrupt, but there's a question in the chat
Sure.
for you. It's asking, purposeful and organized are lumped together, but can you have one without the other? I think it was on
Um,
that last slide.
yeah, I think that yeah, because I think part of the thing is whenever we write things like this, somebody's definition may be a little bit different. And so if you can be purposeful in a way that works for you, that's okay. Where somebody else might be organized and maybe not think they're purposeful, but they're organized to a point where it allows them to be successful. So again, it's just one of those things that we put in semantics really. So that would be fine if somebody has that capacity to be successful. That's all it really comes down to in the end. Hopefully that answers the question. But, okay, the negative factors, of course, I always hesitate with this because I don't want to put adverse childhood experiences as a big thing, but all the research and things that we work with, especially when I work with people with substance use disorders and suicide, this is still a really big deal, right? The things that occur in childhood, the violence, neglect, suicide, substance use disorders, mental health separation, family instability, family members incarcerated, food instability, homelessness, and more. All those things are things we know are detrimental. So it even talks about, 3 in 4 high school students report experienced at least one, um, and 1 in 5 experienced it 4 or more. It can have lasting effects on health and well-being in childhood and life opportunities. You see the cost there, trillions of dollars per year. And one of the things that we find with the people we work with is they have many 4 or more is pretty normal with people we work with in treatment in all different areas of mental health also. It's not unusual to have that occur. And so we want to make sure that we factor that into what we do and talk about it, but it's not the only thing, that can be a negative factor. So the poor perinatal health care, adversities in childhood, dysfunctional family dynamics, psychopathology in parents, poor schooling, and absence of role models and mentors, wars, natural disasters, culture of violence, loss of loved ones, poorly defined expectations, lack of affection and belonging. I think all of you, if you work with early childhood, that's pretty common, that we know these are negative factors and even in substance misuse and things that we work with also, those are pretty common and things that people know can have a negative factor on people. And I think that with the people that I work with specifically, when I talk with people in treatment, I have 3 groups that I work with in treatment currently in different facilities. Some are inpatient, some are outpatient. And the thing I find is that they are really looking for negative communication is one thing I didn't put in here, but that's something that I'm finding more and more has affected them in some way. Something's happened, somebody's told them something, or they heard something, and it caused a reaction that even they didn't expect. And so I think just there's so many negative factors that can occur that we just want to be aware that, everyone might have their own definition of what is a negative factor for them to reduce that possibility of resilience. Something to be aware of as you go through the process. Um, One of the things I put in here is because talk about positive psychology and resiliency. This is something from UPenn, Dr. Seligman. I'm sure you guys have heard of him also. Big researcher, big deal. Done this for many years. He came up with resilience building blocks, and we've talked about these before. And we were actually asked to give my team, our Heart Initiative, we're asked to actually talk about resilience for an entire county. They asked us to come and talk to them. So we actually did 5 weeks on this, talking about all these individually at the time. So we talk about resilience building blocks. The basic part of what we do, the research has shown with Dr. Seligman is, physical health, self-awareness, flexibility and self-regulation, optimism and connection. So we put different words and different things on it, but you've got to be able to sleep, eat, and exercise, keep your physical health going in some way. Um, Paying attention to thoughts, emotions, physiology, and coping strategies. That self-awareness is important for people. um, Changing your thoughts, emotions, physiology, and coping strategies for flexibility and self-regulation. The optimism, again, believing that positive change is possible. And then connecting with others, your valued purpose or faith. And they're finding more and more of that, being just grateful again has been shown to allow people to reduce their stress levels. We talked before we began that people who are more positive and identify as that tend to live longer, 5 to 7 years, some of the research is showing. So we know that being positive and resilient can have benefits to your health. So having that positive psychology, the scientific study of the strengths that enable individuals and communities to thrive has been pretty amazing to what I've done with our groups and with different community members. So I'm hoping it's something that, when we're done with this, you can look at that yourself and see if that's something that you'd be interested in doing more work with. So we use that just as kind of something to guide us in what we do. So for me, one of the things that I did, we were assigned one of these to do when we talked with our counties. And so, of course, I picked optimism, right? 'Cause it's got my name in it. So I thought, what a great idea. I'm going to do that one. And I use sunflowers and things because it's one of my wife's favorite flowers that we use around our home. So it's kind of one of the things I like to put in. But optimism is one part of resilience, right? So we talk about one part of that is, the ability to look an encouraging side, to be in difficult positions and conditions and expect the most positive outcome. The belief that good eventually prevails over evil in the world, the belief that goodness comprises reality, the principle that the present world is the best of all possible worlds. So it's something that when we talk about what optimism is and the resilience skill set from UPenn, we just saw before the slide before, optimism is the ability to notice and expect positive, focus on what you can control, and to take purposeful action. So for a lot of what we find for people that are resilient is, they may have difficult things happen to them, but they take purposeful action to control what their environment's doing to them. So that's something that separates a lot of what we do with resilience, so a maladaptive behavior versus someone who's being more a positive adaptive behavior would be someone who responds to something that happens to them instead of sitting and, not being able to function any longer because they're just worried about what's going to happen, or it becomes really debilitating mental health. As long as they don't have a mental health this disease, um, everyone can be sad when something happens, but when they look at it and they say, well, I may be sad, but I'm going to try and bounce back from this and do this instead. And I'm going to be supportive of someone else, or I'm going to do this. Um, we find those people are more likely to be successful. So taking that action where they can control it. Again, some things may happen that they can't control. Some of those things that we know that are terrible that happen to people, they have no control over. But even in those cases, when they decide that they are not going to be the person who's having it happen to them, they're going to have it happens to them, but they're allowing themselves to take a different action to go forward. So that's something I've tried to teach people. And with the people I work with, I do a lot of talk on resilience and ways to lead them forward instead of um, losing hope. The big thing for anyone is the loss of hope. And I think that's what we're finding in our communities now, which has been difficult to stop and change when someone doesn't know what to do with their lives or with something that's happened to them. And again, some things happen to terrible people. I'm sure all of you have situations where things have happened and things that you've done or had to do to help someone who may be suffering from something that catastrophic that happened to them, a traumatic event. But having worked with many people who've had those events, I'm always surprised at how resilient they really are and how they do have that optimistic outlook. They bounce back and they do things that I don't expect. And some of that is even just people that, working in EMS and having people provide, respond as providers to things and have them be able to function afterwards is always amazing to me. And seeing what they can do. Working with police departments and some of that. There's a lot of things that happen that people wonder, how can anyone do that? But in most cases, they allow themselves to think of it as a service. They're helping as many people to success as they can. And they don't dwell on the fact that they can't help certain people in certain situations. So that's kind of my thought on that. One of the things that I put here, just because it was something that I thought was interesting, was just different findings for some of the different theorists and models that are out there. There's people looking at it. We can send you this information if you'd like it at some
Sorry,
point.
just I'm gonna interrupt you again because you have just two questions in the chat.
Okay.
I think the first one would be it's just kind of bordering along how maybe a strategy to teach gratitude towards maybe the younger children, like 3 to 6. And then the second question would be, is resiliency or how much of resiliency would be nature as opposed to nurture, or what would be your view on that?
Yeah, I guess the second question, nature versus nurture. I have always thought that it was more of kind of the nurture part of that. But again, part of the problem is that I have family members that are, they're family therapists. So it's one of those things that we talk about how you may be in a situation that's very difficult, but you have the capacity to go beyond it. Even because I think even for me, it's genetic, right? So what's a genetic predisposition that you might have? And how do you stop that genetic predisposition from coming forward, in your lifetime? So to me, I think it's really what we're talking about here with resilience, because you can be trained to be more resilient. I think it's really kind of a nurture kind of thing. So education. The first part of that, we'll talk a little bit about some of the things to do with children that are a little bit younger. I think I have some slides that talk about what to do with children specifically. But I think maybe we'll wait to get there so I'll ask that question if I don't have it in here. I'll be honest, I've changed my PowerPoints between a couple different ones, so hoping I have the correct information on this one. But to look at even some of the findings of those theorists that are out there, we talk about, children being able to given objects to manipulate so they can exercise their sensory learning. Some of that allows them, we can get them to begin thinking a little bit differently, and developmentally appropriate information be given to them, I think is really helpful. And we know we have different things and different models, but some of the ones that, obviously we all like are Erickson, or I like Erickson, and Bandura, and that kind of thing. Modeling parent behaviors, right? And doing that's important. So if you model that you're always upset or you're not going to be positive about something, the children don't have a good model for that, especially at that age, because they're so connected to the family and parents, right? That's a difficult age, and we talk about again, nature and nurture. Um, but when you have difficulty with that connection between children and parents or caregivers, that can have a big issue for everyone. So the proper developmental stage and where they are and what we can do to allow them to be successful is something that, again, it's different for every child. We know some general rules, and hopefully I'll see if it's on my um, PowerPoint going forward. So let's try that for a second. Um, there's some of the risk factors and protective factors. There's some simple ones. As a child, difficult temperament, low self-esteem, impaired cognitive development, poor physical health, poor language skills. And protective factors, again, their temperament, good social and emotional skills. So even like with a 3-year-old, we talk about used to be terrible twos and, terrible threes and all of that. Um, and with our families, for example, people that we worked with and people that we did even in our own home, is we never defined them as terrible twos or terrible threes. We said they were terrific twos, terrific threes, whatever we wanted to say. So we kind of made that be something that, you know, tantrums were something we knew were going to happen. It was just something that we didn't support if we could. So, especially around that age, again, every child's different developmentally, but in most cases, if you can support them through that, by making sure they're okay, talking to them. And one of the strangest things that ever happened in our home is one of our daughters was angry and having a temper tantrum, and struck her head, um, because she just put her head down really hard because she was angry. I think she was like 4 years old. And um, we, of course, checked to make sure she was okay and all that. And she was very upset. But then she even said to us, she goes, that was not very smart, right? That wasn't something I should have done. And so she never did it again. And it kind of taught her a little bit that, some behaviors that she could do could harm her also, even though she was trying to be, you know, she was still a child, but she I guess my point for that really is children are more intelligent than we give them credit for. Like that's something we have to remember that they're pretty intelligent if they're supported well, and they have options to continue learning, especially at that age. So I see some more of the things here for risk factors. You know, family disharmony, we talked about some of that already. Inconsistent parenting is a big deal. And somebody with mental illness, right, or substance misuse and abuse, versus a stable home environment, warm and supportive parenting, secure attachments with significant carers, all those things we know, right? And some service things, high quality education and care services are important. Service climate enhances belonging, connectedness, warm and supportive relationships. Because many people now, have children, but their children go and are cared for by someone else. And that's making it difficult, I think, for a lot of our families, to know what to do. Like, what does a school do? Do people actually ask, what's the policy for behavior, for a 3-year-old at a daycare? What are they allowed to do? What are they not allowed to do? And being consistent at home becomes important for those types of things, especially when we're talking about being resilient and having them feel some autonomy, right? Even at that age, they want to be able to do some things on their own and be able to continue learning. And that's, a big deal. So we talk about stressful life events, all of that, and societal things that happen to them. Socioeconomic isolation, for example, lack of access to support services in society versus inclusion, access to support services, and economic security. So we know some things are going to help specifically with children and families, throughout their lifetime. So I think that's something that just to be aware of some of these things, becomes important. Okay, talk about resilient children, right? We want to be able to bounce back from life's many setbacks, be able to face adversity, remain positive. Involves in developing important skills in children, positive social and emotional skills, for example. So relationships play a vital role in resilience throughout the lifespan of an individual. So starting in childhood, and determining the capacity to adapt to adversity, excuse me, and are they able to do that? At what age are they able to begin thinking that if something happens, if they fall down, if they, um, have a parent that leaves or something that happens, what's their response? And we kind of measure that and monitor that. And again, provide support that's necessary for them to know that they are cared for and nothing is going to happen to them. But maybe they've done things differently. We have children that, people will bring somewhere and they'll walk away to another room and the child becomes, inconsolable. And there's also children who are brought to the same environment, some even from the same family, maybe twins or maybe even 1 or 2 years different, who come and they're fine. So again, every child is different, but the support is necessary for them to at least have the capacity to adapt, should be very similar, which is really we'll talk a little bit more about that, but really communication is a big thing, no matter how old they are. Getting them to understand that you're there and you're there to support them and explain to them what may be happening, even if they're 2 or 3 years old, communicating with them what's going to go on as you change their environment or behaviors you must do with them. So resilience is dynamic in nature, changes through interaction environment over time. We're going to talk about some practical promotion of resilience in children and adults. Okay, so same things, right? We've talked a little bit about this before. The health and lifestyle management, eating exercises, exercising, limit risk behaviors, all those things. Prevent the making of mistakes. So learning from their choices and decisions. Maybe giving them a chance to decide what they're going to wear. Even at 3 years old, 3 or 4 years old, about the time they start becoming more aware of that and being able to want to dress themselves and want to do different things or want to eat things differently. Letting them do that and letting them make those mistakes. Developing good problem solving skills, the skill of overcoming challenges, realistic plans, avoids negative thinking, teaching and managing of emotions, limits and rules, reduce tantrums. Something that we have found with a lot of the families we work with. I'm sure some of you do that also. So we used to think that if you have too many rules, it's going to be a problem. And in most cases, for children who have the developmental and cognitive behavior that we expect and don't have disabilities, usually that's going to work. And even with children with disabilities, those limits and rules can be helpful for them. So again, we find that that is a great thing to do. You want to foster self-reliance, support independence and self-reliance, let them know if they can go for a walk. You'll help them or whatever you need to do, but you want them to begin reaching out on their own to do things. Now, one of the things that I found fascinating, some of the research talks about um, schools that fit the child. I've thought about this for a long time because we've had some difficulty with some of our own children being in different types of schools. And because it's vital to sense of purpose, learning coping strategies, and skills for later life. Finding a school that the child feels comfortable in may not be as easy as you think. Public schools generally are really good, but a lot of times it comes down to the teachers, right? What's the teachers? What's the philosophy of that teacher? And what's the philosophy of the basically of the school first, and then the teacher, and the people around them, the support staff even. Um, and I see this with children that are part of a Title I school in Salt Lake that my daughter happens to teach at. And she um, is an amazing teacher because she cares for each one of those children as if they were hers. And that's, you know, going from having 34 children last year in her classroom to somewhere around 23, 24 this year has made a huge change for what she does. And the school she's in, because they don't have a choice, it's a neighborhood school. They had 6 children in their school that did not speak English. And so that's one in one of her class. So she had 6 children that didn't speak English that she was assigned to teach in some way. And she didn't speak their language. They spoke different languages from South America. And, you end up putting them on a tablet to do their work. And yet they would get up and walk around when class was going on. So they didn't understand what was happening. And some really was just having lots of difficulties. So there were some people that didn't wondered if they should have their children stay in those schools. Um, and the ones, at least in my daughter's classroom, decided to stay and had other teachers that were supportive and made that a little bit better the next year when they were able to go forward without some of those students that were having such difficulties. So again, it really does matter where you go. We have students that go to private schools, all different areas that people go to school to see if they can make that work for them. So that's something to think about when you're talking about resilience in children, having the capacity for someone to work and again nurture that capacity in them. Just happens to be just a framework that I think is pretty cool. Family engagement framework. You'll see it goes kind of around here. The thriving indicators, academic outcomes, social emotional competencies. One of the things that I liked about it is it talks about expressing care. Show me that I matter to you. So as an adult, right, showing that that person matters. challenge growth, push the person to get better, the child, provide support, help them complete tasks and achieve goals, share power, treat me with respect, and give me a say, and expand possibilities, connect me with people and places to broaden my world. So I think that's kind of one of my better frameworks that I found and models that we've talked about a little bit. So it's kind of cool. I think it's one of the things that I liked in some Search Institute, developmental relationships. So something to think about when we're talking about children. Let's see. No, it's going slow. See, I'll try it again. Yep, it keeps going back. That's okay. Let's see what we got here. Apologies. Slowing down for some reason. Okay, apologies for this. So family engagement framework, when schools, family, and communities work in partnership, they don't just support economic outcomes, they build environments where families can thrive. So we talk about, now we're trying to bring it all back together, right? For schools, families, and communities, what can we do? So part of that framework allows that to happen. The framework success rests in ability, set out conditions necessary to chart a path towards the type of family engagement that leads to student achievement and school improvement. That's going to be different for every school, and possibly for every child, how it gets to that point. So schools should see families as skilled, knowledgeable partners with children who have great value. And actually, in the end, it increases community capacity. So if you're treating your children with respect, and classrooms in your school, it allows everyone to grow. So for what we do, obviously, we talk about university, community, partnerships, is a big deal. And I think that that's something that we know helps. And you can do schools, families, and communities to make sure people are getting the help they need, in schools, but also the support they need. And I know that with people that are having difficulties, in school, just having that one student have a person that cares about them can go a long ways for them to be successful for their lifetime. And I think we also don't maybe talk about that as much as we should. That by being a good role model and example to a child, especially in a school age child, makes a big difference. I don't know how many of you can actually remember maybe your, teacher from first or second grade, right? I still can remember some of my favorite teachers from first or second grade. And I'm old, and I still remember that. I remember some of the things they did. So that's where, again, we have those. They're, for me, it's really another caregiver. That school and those teachers were caregivers that provided me with a warm, safe, loving place that I could go to, and allowed me to be successful and grow and treat me well, even when, obviously discipline comes in sometimes, but most of the teachers that I had that were really good that I remember, very little discipline was done. It was actually done in a loving way still. So just something to think about too. And I put this in just because I always put in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we always put that in. But one of the things that I like was when we talk about, kind of children, getting up into those areas of self-actualization, morality, creativity, spontaneity, problem solving, like a president's at the very top. Those are pretty cool if people can get to that point. Um, and if you don't have those basics set up in there, with that self-esteem, confidence, achievement, respect of others, all of that in the esteem area, second down the green, we can't get to that top. So we need to make sure that they have those basics. Because I work with people who are unhoused and don't have these basics, it's something that I often think about. So we have children that are in our, warming center, right? The people I work with are often, family members with children. Lots of times it's, mothers with one or two children, or it can be a family of five or six people that we see. And the thing that's fascinating to me is that even though they may be unhoused, they're cared for really well by their families. At least when they're with us, they're really watched well, and they're supportive and supported by the people around them even. So we never know what's going to happen, how it's going to work, but they all need the basic things, being able to take care of their, you know, physiological needs, and then safety, love, belonging, self-esteem, and self-actualization. Right up to the top of that with everyone. Um, Here we talked about children, we'll talk about just practice promotion of resilience in adults. Again, very similar things, lifestyle management, building connections becomes really important again. Prioritizing those relationships, become part of a group, connect with others, develop good problem solving skills, essential skill for overcoming challenges, using realistic plans, avoids negative thinking. That's important. Foster self-reliance, support independence and self-reliance have difficulty, find purpose, help others, create realistic goals, appreciate life and self-worth. Seek help as needed. A mental health professional can develop strategies to assist you after an event that you might experience. They also can help you find skills that you can be taught to build that resilience throughout the lifetime, even a family of a child. And because I'm do a lot with kind of systems theory, um, if we are talking with one member of a family, um, we're not talking to the whole family. So I encourage people to bring entire families in, even the educational components. Bring an entire family if you can, so you can get them to come in if someone's having difficulty, and talk with all of them and see if you can support that family in some of those not simple but skills that will allow them to provide support for their kids. And that may involve even just saying, you know, they tell you they just don't have enough food, or they don't have a safe place to be every night, and trying to help them get connected with the right resources so they can be successful also. Talk about resilience being learned. This is something I think we talk a little bit about, just taking care of your body, all those things we've talked about before, surround yourself in a community, writing in a journal. That's something that people have found to help them prepare them for hardship. So writing things down, talking about what they've done, how they feel, and then being able to look back on that and see how did they respond? Well, what was it? Was it sometimes having things written in black and white on a piece of paper allows them to look at that and go, man, I really didn't do a good job thinking about that. So writing things down has become really important in the research that people are doing and finding um, to have success. And we find that obviously with people in treatment, everyone keeps a journal. We have them document some of that, and I actually have them um, review without telling them I'm going to do it. I will have them, when I start new groups or with new groups of people, I will have them read from their journals. Pick something to read. And they're like, oh my gosh, I've never done that. I've written journals for 20 years. I've never, talked about what I wrote. And so I think that's important too. Doing something that's, we're going to do it. Let's make sure we do it correctly. Talk about creating and working towards goals, realistic goals that better your life. That's obviously going to help with your resilience, and handling stress in a healthy way. So finding something that works for you, but maybe exercising, doing mindfulness, yoga, whatever you think is going to help you handle stress a better way is important. And I can't tell you what's going to be the best way to do it, but I can say there's like, off the top of my head, we could 5 or 6 different things people can do to reduce their stress. So finding those areas, whether it's, progressive muscle relaxation, deep breathing, Qigong, whatever it might be, whatever you like to do, there's lots of opportunities to do that. And sometimes going for a walk is one of the best things you can do physically, and mentally. Just taking a simple walk, right? And people don't think about that either. If I go for a walk, that's something that we know is going to help us feel better. We talk about, there's some groups that talk about being outdoors as prescription RX, going outside, and more mental health providers, especially, and docs, are encouraging people to go, MDs, which encourage people to go out and take a break and go for a walk. Just simple as that to start. And people are like, well, that's kind of crazy. And it's like, when they do it, they're like, well, this does help. It's like, yeah. So a lot of people we have in treatment go for walks every day, and they help them to kind of reset and see that something's a little bit larger than them. We also do some things called dark skies here that we have people go out and with a mental health provider, look into the sky and realize how small they really are and that they're a part of a greater universe, right? They can look out and see those stars and it helps some people, again, not everyone, but many people they work with, it resets them and helps them think about how grateful they are to be here and the gratitude. So much is going on in their lives, but they can stop for a moment and look up in the sky and see, oh my gosh, there's millions and millions of stars. So they're part of that system, right? So it's a big and a small part of that, which can be really overcoming for some people, but also help them to realize that, they can do some good things too in their lives. So again, unusual things that happen and people, I'm always hesitant how I say some things because it can go back and forth between being a positive or a negative for some people. But in most cases, we find that some of the behaviors that we can recommend will help people be successful. Supporting resilient communities, we talk about this a little bit too. Big thing is, there's no superhuman activities needed to be taken. We can all help. Each person has the power to have an impact on their community and supporting the communities. If you provide an environment where resilient children and families can survive and thrive, that's a great thing. Sometimes we see people now are beginning to put together more planned communities. So it's planned out. So you have, a rec center in the center, and then you have pools, you have whatever. Then you have outside of that, you have, playgrounds. They start putting in police departments, school systems, healthcare systems within that same environment. Florida does a lot of that. So where I'm mostly familiar with, because we have family, a lot of family down there. And they build huge communities that do that. And people thrive in those communities because they feel like they're cared for, all the way from children all the way through. So we talk about supporting the environment and improving your health literacy, learn about the harms of alcohol, tobacco, and drugs to all of society. I have to put that in always because that's part of what I do. I put those things in there. But express gratitude for action of those who work in local government, who work everywhere. Gratitude is a big deal. Listen to others' differing views, sorry, and reserve judgment on that person. Try to understand their point of view. Attend local games, shows, farmers markets, special days, all of that. If you're going to be part of that community, you're more likely to be resilient within that community. Um, if you can integrate into a place where you feel comfortable, that's a great thing. Not everyone can, so we don't tell everyone to do that. But if you are capable of doing that, we know that that again has positive benefits for the person that's doing it. It helps reduce their mental health capacities as a negative capacity, I should say. So again, positive, resilient communities, we need positive, resilient people. Create innovative community-led approaches, social services, talk to people what they can do, run for an office, right? Support local businesses, schools, and childcare, assist with fundraising for schools, whatever it might be. Stay informed and stay calm, and have credible sources. We're finding a lot of people now have these ideas of what's going on in communities or in the country even, and it's just not correct. That's something we need to make sure everybody's doing things they need to do. And I'm apolitical. I don't believe in either thing, Democrat or Republican or independent. It's not what I identify as, but I think we've got people in positions that are overreacting to whatever the positions might be. So we need to stay calm and make sure we're talking with people with credible sources. Then checking on neighbors and family members, taking care of your own mental and physical health, again, for those resilient communities. Practice patience, kindness, and mindfulness, something that we talk about. So the big things I would say, if you remember anything out of this presentation, is patience, kindness, and mindfulness is helpful for your children and for you and for entire families, I think, and communities. So volunteering your time, communicate and ask how you can help, and use real dialogue. Talk to people, and be able to talk to people in a way that's going to be beneficial to them and you. And then dialogues, one of my things I thought was kind of cool. People we've used before. Scott London talks about Dialogue, instead of just talking with someone, we talk about having dialogue with people that you may disagree with. Um, so it's aimed to foster mutual respect and insight, common purpose, means listening with empathy, searching for common ground, exploring new ideas and perspectives, and bringing unexamined assumptions into the open. It only works when participants trust and respect each other, suspend judgment, and listen deeply to all points of view. So again, talking about power of dialogue versus discussion, all of that. Dialogue is important because the communication is becoming confrontational. Um, it's not going to happen if you're using a dialogue that's positive. So you don't want it to be confrontational. It's happening. Right now, we need this because there's too much confrontation, fragmentation of society into subcultures, and traditional authority structures are falling. Dialogue is able to span differences and forge shared frames of reference. It gives those formerly excluded from decision making opportunity to participate in the process, finding common ground and establishing priorities for action. This is something that I think is important. Dialogue, we talk about supporting resilient communities. If we aren't talking to each other, if we aren't talking to people who disagree, our community is not going to be as resilient. So it's just something I thought was important and kind of a cool system that Dr. London has used. Other ways to build resilience, again, looking forward, not to the past, be optimistic about your future, strengthen your ethics. So having people look at what are their values and virtues, what do they really want to do? I have many people we talk to that will tell me that they're a very ethical person. I'll ask them, what does that mean to you? They won't really know what that even means, and what values and ethics are you trying to give to your children? How do they respond to things? And I think one of the things that has been interesting is seeing how families will have families who are resilient, and maybe more positive than other families based on one or two parents, or one of the parents being a positive or negative person. And so it's really fascinating to see what research really is showing about the interaction between those who may be wanting something positive to happen to their families, to someone saying, my family is not going to be successful because I can't support them the way that they should be supported. And so trying to make sure that we're not separating it up as it's someone's fault. So ethically, how do we make sure that their values are moving forward with them and their families in a way that's going to help them not look back on it and say they're failures? So for me, um, what are their values and virtues, and have they used them? We have many people who are um, not very wealthy that may have struggled with their wealth, but their values and virtues allow them to be thriving in their environments. So it doesn't really have much to do with money. It's actually about their values and how they provide um, their ideas to their children. So building talents, finding, new or explore hobbies, improve effective problem solving skills. We all know we need to do that. How do we do that? And mostly it involves communication. One of the things we'll say really quickly is improving your problem solving skills. Sometimes if you are going to respond to someone, maybe take an opportunity at one point to go in the mirror and record yourself. How do you respond to someone's question? Does your voice change? Do you take a different tact with it? So think about what your problem solving skills really are. Are they positive or negative? Are you promoting a negative feeling in that person, or are you trying to help them? So it's something to think about. And building resilience, how do you respond to adversity? Again, what do you do when someone tells you something? I've been called every name in the book by people. I've been threatened. I've had my life threatened. I've had all these things happen. People who try and fire me. I've been sued as part of my role with universities. So for me, I've been very lucky because it hasn't been something that I've had to worry about um, personally, because it was something as a part of my roles that I've had. But it's not fun to have people call you names and do that. So to me, it was always like, if someone's saying that to me, there must be something that's happening to them. And that's the way I frame it in my own mind is that I've got people that I work with are usually at some kind of mental health issues or problems that have happened that make them basically unkind for a period of time until they decide that they want to be more positive. So again, I've tried to just reframe it a little bit. So thinking about that with adversity is reframing, then be healthy, exercise, work on physical and mental health, and be happy and show your expressions outwardly. Smile, tell people you're happy, sing, whatever you do, to show that, especially to your family. Talk about the 3-year-olds. You're modeling behavior for that child. What can you do to make sure that that child knows they're loved and cared for, but also that, you know, you're a happy person too. You're happy to have them there with your family. Um, and sometimes it does get kind of lost when things get difficult. So making sure you're trying to resolve some of those issues with children becomes important too. So we have some stress things for people. We want to talk about just some simple things I put in because I do kind of the 5 hours of stress reduction. Here's where we talk about reorganize, rethink, reduce, relax, release. So if you're organizing, for example, these kind of meals, just to put those out, plan your meals for a week. Um, Put that into your daily routine and make sure that you're doing that. This is as important as studying. We talked about with students doing this. So it's something we try to do. Rethinking, remain calm and think positive, focus on things that will help you do well, prioritize daily events, making checklists from most important to least important. So rethinking that for our people. Reduce, eliminate distractions. Talk about studying in a place allows you to focus. Designate time to turn off technology and devices and focus on studying. Do the same things with people who aren't using this as part of a student focused area. Again, eliminate those distractions. Turn off technology for a day or two, or for a weekend. Um, Remember, we used to go days without people calling us. So you can miss a day if you tell people, put a away note on your phone or something. Remember, relax, sleep is important. Getting more sleep is important. Um, Talk about just some deep breath relaxation techniques, doing some of that to relax and release. Get moving, relieve that muscle with exercise, hit the gym or go for a walk. All those things that you can do. And that increases your mood and improves your sleep. Going for just a simple walk, very beneficial. And again, some stress management techniques, the positive self-talk, daily affirmations, humor and laughter, healthy lifestyles, time management, deep breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, taking deep breaths, relaxing. If we've all done those. There's also the 4-4-4 method. Breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, breathe out for 4 seconds, breathe in again. So it's all these different forms that people do. But then, yeah, it's really just about mindfulness. It's about taking some time to think what you're doing with your breath. So something you can try just very simply with even starting out with like maybe 2 seconds of inhaling and holding and exhaling and all of that, going through that as a box kind of breathing technique. You look up online too, it's pretty simple. And then visualization, self-management, obviously very important for reducing stress. Progressive muscle relaxation, make stress kits. We've got lots of things we can have people make with that. Stress balls, mindfulness-based eating, talk about doing that, and meditation. We have even some meditation that we've can lead people through the mindfulness-based stress reduction, just to try, but we probably won't have time to do that this time, but something to just think about in the future. And if you take some time to do that, maybe even you encourage your children to try some of this, to just relax and do some things that are going to make them be successful. Again, this is breathing exercises. You can do this if you'd like, just putting your feet flat on the floor, breathing in, all of that, back straight, comfortable. Um, Become aware. Inhale 2 to 4 seconds, hold 2 to 4 seconds, and exhale 2 to 4 seconds. So same kind of thing. So you do those at some point if you like, and then some stress definitions. And this is one of the things that I wrote years ago, and I've done this for years with people, with thousands of people talking about what they can do just for work-life balance, just general things we can do. I know we're getting towards the end of this, so just go really quick. Good nutrition, obviously lean meats, all of that stuff we know. Exercise regularly, don't smoke, sleep. Becomes very important. People forget that sleep, as you get older, should not diminish. It should remain the same or get even a little bit longer. Because as you age, you actually need as much or more sleep than you had before. People generally don't sleep as much because of pain or other problems with sleep. Managing stress, all those things reduce high-risk behaviors. See healthcare providers regularly. Preventive health screening is very important. People stop that oftentimes. But if you have the opportunity to do it, do it. Develop, maintain good association with management, other employees, if you have that with you. Continue to learn throughout your life, have fun, and laugh daily. And call me with questions. And I hope that's how you feel now. Any other questions come up, Mr. Leo?
Oh, I'm pretty sure you just have a few comments in the chat if you want to read them, but I'm pretty sure they're more like statements rather than questions, but if you want to comment on them as well. We also have the floor open for any more questions as well, just for a minute or two if you'd
Yeah,
want to
one of
ask.
the things I'll say, this is really just really kind of a basic kind of conversation because there's so many models of different things we can do. We're talking about behaviors and things that people can do, especially when we're talking about resiliency. And I think I tried to go over just a few things and try to put some models in there people might find easier to use um, because certain, I think groups of people have their own models that they use. And I work with people in the social work department. They can have their own model. The family therapy department has their own models of resiliency. People that I work with, even in the ag, have their own self-resiliency stuff that they do. So again, I just try to do some general basic things for people. Hope somebody have difficulty signing in. Hopefully they got in. Other
And
things.
then I see that Elizabeth has her hand raised, so if you want to ask your question, Elizabeth.
Where Elizabeth?
Yes, hi. Can you explain because you went fast and I did have a question about uh what about brain muscle relaxation. Can you care to explain how technique, what do you how a person can do that? Because I do that very often, so I wanted to know if it works for me. So if what your recommendations can be better.
Yeah, if you talk about maybe progressive muscle relaxation, is that what you're thinking?
Well, because that's why the slide went away. So
Uh-huh.
I'm talking about the brain.
Oh, the mindfulness. Okay. Yeah, we can actually send that out to you too, so you can have that. But the reality
Mhm.
is, it's just a matter of taking the time to really, sit still for a moment. Um, and I always do it when, we talk about your feet flat on the floor, your back flat against your chair, sitting up tall, and then allowing yourself to be, again, in a safe environment to do it. Taking those deep breaths, and just relaxing for a moment. You can do it, like I said, we can do the 2 to 4 seconds. Inhale, hold for 2 to 4 seconds, exhale, hold for 2 to 4 seconds, inhale again. So it's just kind of, we call it box breathing. So it's kind of like something that people do to relieve some stress.
Tension, tension.
Correct.
Because
Okay.
I've been suffering a lot of tensions lately,
Okay.
and the stations come yeah, to be afraid to go outside.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
So in that case, maybe again, that's a little more than maybe
I
what
know.
we
But it is because it
recommend.
is the tension is there,
Yeah.
but it's because I've been provoked the times for the
Okay.
past two
Yeah.
weeks. And
Yeah.
it's if somebody's gonna attack you, what
Yeah.
it's that it's
I
that
think,
yeah.
well, what's fascinating, so some of you are on here, I'm sure, we have some people that have actually done, um, go to self-defense classes who
Well,
had problems with things that they couldn't, they were afraid to go outside. And so it's something that helped them at least a little bit to
Um,
understand that maybe it wasn't, that they felt more secure themselves, even though they were never going to use that against anyone. It kind of helps
okay,
them to think
yeah,
differently about their environment.
yeah, but you put you talk about it also when the tensions rise, you had to, um, that's what I did
Yeah,
when I was having those encounters. I just did, instead of um, diffuse the circumstances of the attacker.
yeah,
That's what I did.
good.
And
Yeah,
then
so you've
I'm
tried to make
pretty
it work for
sure,
you. Yeah,
sorry,
Okay, so
just
I did,
sorry for
and everything
interrupting.
was good. Okay, all right.
that's
Okay,
Just
thank you.
one
good.
more question in the chat. It's asking, do you have suggestions for any types of therapy to teach children resiliency or any other maybe strategies? But yeah, just a community resource perhaps.
Well, I'll put, yeah, kind of community resource would be like talking with someone in the family therapy groups. Actually, we have the Sorensen Center here, and lots of people, if you're talking about actually getting someone to help a child, talk about that specifically, because without knowing what that child maybe has been through, it's hard to say I can build resiliency in a child, just by talking to them about it or giving someone something to work with without knowing what's happened in their past. So I advise people to talk with someone as a therapist to get help. And for someone who's you're wondering about children and resiliency, because again, most of the family therapists are more systems oriented, so they look at the entire family. That sometimes is a really good way to do it to get them some assistance for resiliency. The other part of that would be simply some of the notes that I had on there is, letting them have some more autonomy, some things that they can do themselves to build some resiliency in a child. So what can we do to help that child? And every child is going to be different. What's something they can do? Can we let them go with a friend to the store? Again, age appropriate things, or can they go play by themselves in a playground, right? You're still there with them, but they're walking by themselves with their friend to go play. So maybe something very simple as that to start teaching that some resiliency, that they have some autonomy, they have a little bit of power, right? It's a bad thing to say this, I think, but resiliency in some ways is about feeling a little bit more powerful in who you are, right? In some ways, that's what you're really doing. You're teaching resiliency. You're teaching them to respond in a way that's going to provide them the feeling that they have some control. And without that control, the resiliency is hard to maintain throughout a lifetime. So providing that from a very young age, again, letting children, I'm sure if you have children or grandchildren or family members with kids, sometimes children will change their clothes 10 times in a day if you let them do that. So maybe you let them do that a couple of times and you have to go, okay, we have to wash these clothes now. They're not going to be available for you next day. And they're like, oh, is that really what happens? I didn't know that's what was going to go on. So maybe as simple as that, just starting with some of those things and say, yep, so maybe we'll limit you to 4 or 5 outfits today, right? We'll do it this way. Let's do this and kind of reduce it down that way so they have some say. There's programs we work with from Iowa State, the Strengthening Families program, 10 to 14. It talks about love and logic. How do you respond to someone who's done something or has made a bad decision? Do you look at it and say, you have to stop, right? You don't explain it to anybody, or do you say, this is why it's going to be wrong. This is what we're going to do as discipline for you. And you have already spoken to them prior to that about deciding what the discipline is going to be. So you talk to your children and family members, hey, if you're late coming home for dinner, the the consequence is going to be this. So we talk about natural, logical consequences. So you do it at the time it happens, you don't do it later, but you don't overreact. You try and make it be appropriate to the behavior. You do something as simple as that. So to me, it's one of the things that we kind of talk about. I don't talk about it much in this because I was trying to make it pretty simple, but if you can think of it even that way, that can be very helpful for families too. Okay, we got some
Thank you.
good things.
Oh yeah, you're getting a heart reaction and everything. That's
Wow,
awesome.
that's good. I'm surprised. Sorry, I
And
just did another presentation like just before this. So I was hoping I wasn't going to combine my presentations in my head. So
No, you did good. You did
okay.
wonderful. I really enjoyed it. I think something that hit really close to home as well was the schools and families and teachers and all the communities and how that framework kind of comes together. I think I saw it in one of my younger siblings. He was really struggling and I think he was really struggling in the public school system when he entered high school, but they found a specific charter school here in Utah that it really changed him. He did a complete 360. It was absolutely wonderful. So I think your presentation was really great and it really, yeah, it has some really good information too. So
Thank you. Thank you guys.
we,
Thank you for the questions too, and for everybody to do that.
oh yeah. All right. So I think we had a bunch of great questions for today's session. So we'll probably end up foregoing those community questions slash case presentation that we did have today. But I think the questions that we had today are super wonderful, and all of the resources and Tim's presentation as well will be posted on Canvas. We really appreciate him coming, presenting for the Substance Use Network here at USU's IDRPP. I really encourage all of you to come to our next session, which is happening on November 12th. It's Parents with Children in Treatment, and Amy Parker from Odyssey House is actually going to come present for us in November. So we're really excited for that. It'll be at the same time at 12 p.m., same place over Zoom if you join using iEcho. So yeah, thank you guys so much, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. And if you want to join that Canvas page as well, make sure you email projectscope@usu.edu, and we can get that invitation over to you guys. So have a good one.